Hi, I'm Scott with BibleStudy.net, and we're continuing to take a look at our study on the gospel. We've defined the gospel biblically, and now we're taking a look at modern church groups and seeing how well we do in terms of whether or not we actually have the biblical definition. We saw that it was important from the New Testament that we have the actual teaching of the gospel, that we don't alter it, that it can't be altered, that God intends for us to understand that what He promised, this earthly inheritance, this earthly kingdom where we can serve Him without fear of our enemies, that we receive that through Jesus Christ, that God is clear that that was never going to change. And throughout the entire Bible, in all of the New Testament, ending in the book of Revelation, the message is always still the same. This is a coming earthly kingdom which will replace the previous earthly kingdoms, and which the saints will be given rule over this earthly kingdom under heaven. So, in other words, earthly. So, we started taking a look at a major view that's out there in the church today that actually doesn't hold to this position. In fact, they don't believe, and this is covenant theology and amillennialism, which is a view that we've already seen is held by Lutherans, Presbyterians, Reformers, Calvinists, some Wesleyan Methodist churches, some Baptist churches, some evangelical churches, Roman Catholics, and Greek Orthodox. There's a huge amount of Christians today in modern denominations don't believe that we will receive an earthly inheritance. We've seen the Augsburg Confession or the Swiss Reformed or the Anglican statements on this officially, that they believe that this is a Jewish fable that needs to be rejected, that this is not what the New Testament is talking about. Then they spiritualize this earthly kingdom into something else, into in fact what's going to be a heavenly inheritance. So they're altering something the New Testament doesn't alter. What license do they have to do this? None. So I'm going to continue to read some facts on this just so you can see. This is from BibleFacts.org. They have a chart comparing covenant theology with another alternative view we're going to talk about in a second, and they list various factors. They talk about, in eschatology, covenant theology is usually amillennial, and their understanding of the kingdom on earth is that it's symbolic. Okay, rather than the literal, physical, earthly understanding of that inheritance. This is from a different point of view. Traditional dispensationalists, which we're going to talk about in a second, is in fact the major opposing view to covenant theology. But this is their definition as they define what their covenant theology is. They said, those who hold to covenant theology believe that what were promises of land and many descendants and blessing in the Old Testament to Israel have been converted to spiritual blessings. They do not interpret these prophecies in a normal sense. Covenant theology would say that the number 1,000 is a symbolic and does not represent a literal 1,000 years, and they believe that we are in the millennium right now and that Christ with His saints is ruling in heaven. So again, a heavenly rule rather than an earthly kingdom. This is from Wikipedia, is under covenant theology, has its roots to various authors immediately following the foundation of the church, it says, and it lists Augustine. So anyone who knows the history knows that Augustine didn't immediately follow the foundation of the church. He came over 350 years later. So that would be like saying that Bill Clinton was the first president of the United States. Obviously, it's not historically responsible. So this next quote here is from Britannica on eschatology and on the views of Augustine. We said we would talk about the importance of Augustine in this. It says, the city of God, this is one of his major works, represented the church and its eternal bliss in the courts of heaven. So Augustine believed that the church would receive heavenly inheritance eternally. He rejected as carnal any expectation of a renewed or purified world or earth that the believers could expect to enjoy. The literalistic descriptions of judgments that were predicted, he goes on to talk, were all interpreted allegorically by Augustine. Didn't believe anything was going to happen in regard to the physical earth or receiving any inheritance on the earth. He said the millennium, concept of the church ruling on the earth, had become a spiritual state. It wasn't a literal, physical, historical, earthly kingdom like the United States or ancient Greece or Rome or anything like that. It was a spiritual state that the believer enters into. And so as far as the struggle for the world was concerned, Augustine surrendered the field. He saw he basically saw that there was no kingdom coming. Let's see if there's anything else here. Augustine's allegorical millennialism became the official doctrine of the church, and apocalypticism, which is another term for the belief in an earthly kingdom ruled by the saints with Jesus here. Apocalypticism went underground. The doctrine of Augustine remained unchallenged until the 17th century. The Protestant reformers of Lutheran, Calvinist, and Anglican traditions remained firmly attached to the views of Augustine. So the Augustinian millennial worldview survived the Reformation. That is, all of the Reformed churches, all the Reformed leaders adopted Augustine's view that there would be no literal earthly kingdom, that the saints would receive an eternal heavenly inheritance. Lastly, let's see here. This is from Wikipedia. It says Augustine's influence, and it says his career, after moving from premillennialism to amillennialism, he believed that the idea of an earthly kingdom was symbolically representative of Christ's presence reign with the saints. And then it says that this view, which began there in the late 300s, became the foundation for the Middle Ages, which practically abandoned, for all entire purposes, the idea of premillennialism or an earthly kingdom, with Jesus here ruling over the earth with the saints. And so the next quote here, it just deals with the same thing. So we've seen this over and over. So that's what a huge amount of the body of Christ today believes about the gospel. They believe that we receive an eternal heavenly inheritance. They receive this concept from Augustine, and this has been going on now for 1,600 plus years. The other alternative that's out there is called traditional dispensationalism. And the people that hold to this, various organizations including Moody Bible Institute, Dallas Theological Seminary, many Pentecostal churches, Baptists, Wesleyans, Methodists, and many of the independent and non-denominational type churches believe in this second major alternative, which we're going to find out is different from covenant theologians. So there is huge disagreement in the church today over what the gospel is, but it's not correct. It has its own problems, its own failings, which don't meet with the Scripture. And so, let's see here if we can read some quotes about this. Under Wikipedia on dispensationalism, it says, mostly influential in the United States. It was a system originally proposed by John Nelson Darby. The Schofield Reference Bible, annotated study Bible that taught dispensationalism as a system, also known very well through Dallas Theological Seminary and Moody Bible Institute. And then it says dispensationalism adherents. This is from Wikipedia. It says many Protestant groups, Protestant, Charismatic, and Baptist churches, independent and non-denominational churches. So this is basically between these two groups, covenant theology and dispensationalism, almost every major church in America today. And so what their difference is, they don't believe, like covenant theologians, that Jews and Gentiles receive the same thing. Covenant theologians, amillennialists, believe that Jews and Gentiles receive the same thing, but it's a heavenly, eternal heavenly reward rather than an earthly reward. The traditional dispensationalists say no, Jews and Gentiles don't receive the same thing. The Jews may receive an earthly reward, but the saints, the Gentile saints, will receive, this heavenly reward. So what is it that, let's read that and then we'll talk more about this. But obviously what they're doing is they're nullifying these New Testament teaching that together the Jews and the Gentiles, through Christ, receive an earthly promised inheritance. And so I'm going to take a break here for a second. We'll read some quotes on this when we get back and talk more about traditional dispensationalism.